Gazing upon our world from a distance, it appears peaceful and calm. But the reality is far different. The repercussions of climate change are approaching us all, and we all contribute to this impact. By 2050, projections indicate that over 3 billion people will reside in various urban centers in the Asia-Pacific region alone. Urban activities are a key contributor to climate change. Cities are responsible for 75% of global CO2 emissions, with transport and buildings among the most significant contributors. And since 2012, the Asia-Pacific region has collectively been responsible for more than half of global greenhouse gas emissions yearly. The repercussions of climate change are imminent and befalling us all. Several Asian countries are among the top 10 countries most affected by climate change, with the Philippines ranked the 4th, India ranked the 7th, and Thailand ranked the 9th. It's time to act, and we have a joint responsibility to address climate change through urban development planning and design guided by climate data. That's where Urban Act comes in. Urban Act, or the Integrated Urban Climate Action for Low Carbon and Resilient Cities project, is a regional project that aims to support the transformation towards low carbon and resilient urban development and contribute to implementing each partner country's nationally determined contributions and the Sustainable Development Goals. Funded by the International Climate Initiative, or ICI, commissioned by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action, or BMWK, Urban Act is implemented in 5 partner countries: China, India, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand, with a duration spanning 5 years from 2022 to 2027. We aim to achieve 4 critical outputs. These outputs include improving the institutional environment for climate-sensitive urban development, using evidence-based, inclusive, climate-sensitive, spatial and urban planning, identifying project concepts for urban climate action investment, and enhancing knowledge through regional networking, exchange, and learning. Our collaborative partnership comprises the Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit GmbH, or GIZ, as a project leader, and the international partners consisting of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, or ESCAP, United Cities and Local Governments Asia Pacific, or UCLG ASPAC, the University of Stuttgart, and TU Dortmund University, and national partners in each of the project countries. To promote and showcase a sustainable integration of climate change into urban development, Urban Act implements its support in 14 pilot cities across the 5 countries, recognizing the unique context of the partner countries and aiming to improve the country's specific policies and regulatory frameworks. Furthermore, we engage in joint operations with the Indonesia-Malaysia-Thailand Growth Triangle, or IMTGT, implementing initiatives in 6 cities within the IMTGT sub-region. We are all standing on the edge, and every decision and action we take today will shape our future for generations to come. It is not just a choice, it's a collective responsibility that falls on each of our shoulders. It's time for us to unite and journey towards low-carbon, resilient urban development. Join us in the Urban Act, Joint Action for Climate-Friendly and Resilient Cities. We are stronger if we are together.
Thank you. So a very warm welcome again to all the participants to Climate Conscious Cities Urban Act webinar series. And the title for today's webinar is Making Urban Climate Projects Bankable, Tools, Diagnostics, and Pathways. So I will be your moderator for today. I am Ashita Sharma, working as Cities and Climate Change Technical Advisor at United Nations ESCAP and supporting the Urban Act project from the ESCAP side. So, for this webinar today, we have over 400 registrations, which are not just from Asia and the Pacific, but also from various other regions of the world. And the number is significantly higher, and this shows the keen interest in the topic. So this webinar is actually part of broader Urban Act webinar series. And the aim of or the objectives of this series is to increase the knowledge and understanding for integrated climate action at the local level, communicate and raise awareness for key innovations and emerging topics for low carbon and resilient cities, to build and enhance partnerships between the Urban Act project and also with other stakeholders, and also to showcase best practices, learnings, and innovations from the project to the wider audience. So as we move ahead, so you might have noticed that there were some questions. You were requested to ask some questions during the registration, and thanks to all those who responded. And we will make sure that most of your questions are answered during the webinar or through the presentations of the expert presenters. So before we start the discussion, here are some housekeeping remarks. Please note that the webinars are recorded and will be available with slides for following each of the webinar on Urban Act Knowledge Platform and also on ESCAP social media. Please feel free to use the chat box during the webinar to interact with other participants, but please use Q&A function specifically to write your questions to the panelists. And certificate of participation will be made available by filling up the survey feedback form, which will be shared with you in the chat box by the end of this session. Thank you. So about the topic today, so most of you could be engaged last week with World Urban Forum in Baku, and perhaps those who joined in person are still catching up on exciting conversations and new ideas and probably some sleep also, while others may have followed the rich discussions online. So at World Urban Forum, again, this message came out very strongly that cities are the front line of climate action. And cities from across the world, they came together to share their experiences in terms of urban development, resilience, and climate action. And since the cities are at the front line of climate action, they cannot do much without the excess of finance and without the improved project preparation capacities or without the practical pathways which can turn the local climate ambitions to investable, implementable investments. So the agencies and programs, they do have finance. Cities do have the project ideas, but still the projects do not move forward. And there are many reasons for it. And one of the main reason is the bankability of the project. So building upon this, our today's webinar aim to continue the conversation by focusing on how cities across Asia and the Pacific can strengthen the bankability of urban climate projects and then better connect with the financing opportunities. We have a esteemed panel of experts with us today. So we will move, without taking much time, we will move to our first presentation of the day. So our first speaker is Mr. Hamza Abdullah from Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance. So Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance is a global coalition of public and private institutions which are dedicated to closing the investment gap for urban and subnational climate projects. And his presentation will focus on how cities can better prepare climate projects for investment and then can address the common barriers in the project. Thank you, Hamza. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Achita. Hope you can hear me well. Hello, everyone, and thank you again to the Urban Act team for the invitation. My name is Hamza Abdullah, and I work with the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance, or CCFLA. In this presentation, I will briefly introduce the project preparation process, highlight some common barriers that cities face, and also discuss some early stage financial considerations in the process. As Ashita mentioned, cities are central to climate action, but there remains a major financing gap that continues to slow the implementation of urban climate projects. And one important reason of this is that many cities may struggle to develop feasible and bankable projects from their initial concepts. So this is where project preparation becomes important. It is a process of refining a project concept into a technically feasible and credible project that is aligned with economic priorities and capable of securing public or private finance. This includes understanding life cycle cost and implementation risks of projects, and as well as likely financing pathways early in the process. Project preparation process is important because it helps cities filter out unviable or low impact projects early on, while ensuring that stronger projects are aligned with development priorities, are technically sound, and have clear financial or economic rationale. On this slide, I want to briefly introduce the project preparation life cycle. In this life cycle, projects typically move from planning and concept definition into pre-feasibility, feasibility, and then structuring and transaction stages. At the planning stage, cities identify their climate or development priorities and begin developing initial project lists or pipelines. And then at the concept stage, project ideas from the pipelines are refined and scoped further. And this includes things like what problem is being solved, what are the possible solutions, who are the beneficiaries, what impact will be achieved, and how we can measure that impact. Then pre-feasibility stage helps cities compare different solution options and begin assessing risks and implementation considerations with each option, including things like what option is most economically impactful, what we can realistically implement, and how cost will be covered, and so on. And then feasibility and structuring stages then involve more detailed technical and financial studies, investor engagement, procurement processes, and then financial closing. However, many projects may face barriers at different transition points in this life cycle, as you can see here. So, the first gap that we identify in this is between planning and concept definition stages. So, at this stage, cities may have strategies and priorities, but they struggle to translate those into concrete projects. Initial financing considerations are also often not introduced at this stage, and cities' local capacities may be limited for further preparation as well. The second gap is between pre feasibility and feasibility stages, and this is where cities often face limited preparation budgets and weak financial or socio-economic rationale, which could result in unclear value propositions, and then projects ultimately often fail to move forward. And then the final gap is the investor matchmaking gap, where even technically prepared projects may still struggle to align with financial or investor requirements or demonstrate sufficient implementation readiness. Integrating financial considerations early in the project lifecycle can help cities avoid some of these barriers or gaps and improve the likelihood of successful project implementation. So, this table highlights key financial consideration across the early stages. So, at the planning stage, cities should assess their funding and investment capacities, identify likely financing pathways for priority projects, and distinguish between projects better suited to public funding versus private financing. Then, at the concept stage, cities should develop indicative project cost, refine the likely financing pathways, and also map realistic funding or financing sources based on project types and intervention options. And then at the pre-feasibility stage, cities could compare life cycle cost across intervention options to identify most affordable and sustainable solutions. and they can also identify a financing structure, which includes things like how much money will be needed, where it will come from, whether it will come from grants, own source revenues, or whether the city will have to take out loans and things like that. And at this stage, cities should also finalize a credible case for any donor, public, or private financiers before moving into detailed feasibility studies. So, on this slide, there's this case study from Indonesia that demonstrates how early stage economic and financial considerations can strengthen project implementation. Between 2022 and 23, the city's climate finance gap fund supported cities in Indonesia through upstream technical assistance for green and affordable housing. The project used suitability and hazard analysis to identify where future government supported housing subsidies should be prioritized based on climate risks and other economic considerations. During the TA, different intervention options were assessed, including retrofit, densification, as well as new housing considerations. And this helped strengthen the economic rationale for cities while demonstrating that green housing could remain affordable and deliver broader social and economic benefits. And another important aspect was that local governments were trained to use analytical tools to support future housing planning and investment decisions. And this thorough early preparation later informed a $175 million ADB proposal for green housing subsidies. And this also attracted follow on preparation support from the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank. And this project also helped shape Indonesia's national housing program that targeted 1 million green homes. So, overall, this case demonstrates how early stage project preparation can strengthen investment readiness, improve project quality, and better align projects with funding opportunities, such as subsidies in this case. That's all from my end. I'll stop here. Thank you for your time, and over to you, Ashita.
Thanks a lot, Hamza. Thanks a lot for sharing such insightful information related to the case study in Indonesia and also highlighting the barriers at different stages of project cycle. Very helpful and also very helpful for sticking to the time. Thank you. So, moving to there would be, of course, many questions, but we will have the question answer session after each of the presentations. So moving to our next presentation, I'm delighted to welcome Ms. Melissa Karim, who is Regional Engagement Lead of GCOM Gap Fund Partnership. So this partnership is also helping the cities to bridge the gap between municipal climate ambitions and the capital needed to build them. And Ms. Melissa will today highlight why many urban climate projects ideas stall at early stages and will also highlight some of the tools which have been built by the partnership. Over to you, Melissa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashita. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. And thank you very much to the Urban Act team and ESCAP colleagues for the invitation. So I'm Melissa Karim, and I am the Regional Engagement Lead for Africa, representing the partnership between the Gap Fund Partnership and the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. And I am specifically in charge of developing the toolkit that our regional teams have prepared, and that's why I'm here today. But I'm also connected, my colleague Jaslyn Lee, who is connected online today, is the Regional Engagement Lead for South Asia and Southeast Asia, and she's based in Kuala Lumpur, and she's our main point of contact in the region, alongside our colleague Marvin Lagonera, who is the city advisor based in Manila. And I think Jaslyn has just shared her contact details and information in the chat, so do not hesitate to reach out to her directly if you have specific questions. We all work as a team. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the GAP Fund or GCOM, I will very briefly introduce this institution. So the City Climate Finance GAP Fund in full, or GAP Fund is in short, is a multi-donor trust fund launched in September 2020 and jointly implemented by World Bank and the European Investment Bank. So two multilateral development banks with the support of GIZ and GCOM for the technical support provided to cities. So it's so the GCOM also, just one word on GCOM, it's the largest alliance, global alliance of cities and local governments committed to climate action. We work mostly with smaller municipalities, and our C40 colleagues are working mostly with capital cities and larger cities. And we provide technical support, but also technical and financial support on specific projects around the world. And the two organizations, GCOM and the GAP Fund, launched a partnership in 2023 to make sure that that cities receive the technical assistance they need to develop robust climate-related project ideas to be submitted to the GAP Fund. So I will not spend too much time on this slide because my colleague just from CCFLA just explained in great detail the project preparation life cycle, but I just wanted to highlight that the GAP Fund only works at the pre-feasibility stage of your long project journey, which means that we focus on the three steps highlighted here on this slide, and we basically support cities in defining the scope of the intervention, the beneficiaries, the climate impact, the type of technical assistance needed, but also the long-term, and we also help cities to plan for the long-term technical and financial, to explain their technical and financial needs throughout the project life cycle. So more concretely, before presenting the content of the tools, I just also wanted to highlight that we have a regional impact. So we have regional leads in each region, and we develop tools that are adapted to the needs of the regions. And that's why Jaslyn and Marvin are working closely with the Urban Act colleagues for a number of years. We have jointly contributed we have jointly participated in events, and this is one picture taken at WOOF 12. We have also jointly organized capacity building activities. And this is important for today's session. And also what was important is that Urban Act colleagues also helped with the identification of project ideas that could be a good fit for the GAP Fund, and the teams provided joint technical assistance to refine project ideas. So it's a long-term collaboration, and I'm glad that that is continuing today. And on the tool, so as I said, the development of this tool was a long-term process. So we started since 2023 and developed tools depending on the requests we received directly from cities, is the bilateral request or during capacity building events. Because as you can see here, we've delivered 126 capacity building activities around the world since 2023. I don't have the exact numbers in Southeast Asia, but maybe Jason can share that in the chat. And based on this, we've developed regionally tailored tools. But on this point, I just want to highlight that we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So we have worked very closely with partners, including CCFLA connected here, but also UN Habitat, all UN agencies, WRI and C40 and others, because we first started with a thorough inventory of all the technical tools available to cities to support their project preparation journey in every sector. So that's formed the basis of our work. And based on this, we've developed a toolbox that is only aiming to support early stage project preparation, and that can be summarized in 5 successive steps. The first step is support in the identification of identification of project ideas. So as part of this specific step, we have a repository of GAP Fund approved projects. We also have a project origination questionnaire, a project selection template. And yeah, I will not have time to go into detail, but they will be online in the coming month. Then we have the second step that aims to prioritize projects. So we have a project prioritization checklist, and also sector-specific compendium of pre-feasibility support. I mean, it's just a it's just what is required at the pre-feasibility support at the pre-feasibility stage under each sector. For the third step, this is really focusing on drafting a concept note that is aligned with the eligibility criteria of public development banks. So we generally use the templates, the expression of interest template that is available on the GAP Fund website. And my colleague Jaslyn will also share the link in the chat. Under step 4, related to maturation, we focus on the long-term planning, as I said. So we have checklist with what is expected from technical and financial partners at each step of the project preparation journey, and we have sectoral guides to help cities move one step ahead. And then the last step is to sustain the project. So one key aspect of our work is to make sure that the project does not stop after receiving pre-feasibility support. So we make sure that cities understand the landscape of project preparation facilities, but also technical and financial partners. And we use a lot the CCFLA repository that Hamza can also, I'm sure he can share also the link on the chat. And we also connect directly cities with some of our partners. So basically, this is what we've offered to cities, and we pick and select tools based on the needs expressed by the cities we work with. One case study, very briefly, for today's presentation. So we chose the case study of Itahari in Nepal. And we have many more projects supported by the GAP Fund across Southeast Asia on the website. And this is so Itahari is a fast-growing intermediary cities in eastern Nepal, the challenge that we've identified was not only flooding, but they had many challenges, and they wanted to use nature-based solutions for risk management. So the GAP Fund supported several studies, geological, hydrological, topographic, like many different studies, and this work generated a catalog of 45 locally relevant nature-based solution measures, which were assessed through multi-criteria analysis and refined through data analysis, field visits, and stakeholder consultation. So yes, it's just to show that it's a long-term journey, and the city generally comes with a broad idea, and then the pre-feasibility studies help to refine and further specify technical interventions that are robust and suitable and technically feasible on the ground. And I will simply end now with what's coming soon. So as Jaslyn wrote in the chat, so the toolbox is still being compiled and will be available online. What we are planning to do is to have an online platform that is easy to navigate and accessible to all cities that you could use alone. But in the meantime, all the tools I presented, we are already using them through bilateral engagements with the cities in the regions. So I strongly encourage you in the meantime, because the platform will not be live before, I think, October. So in the meantime, I strongly encourage you to reach out to Jaslyn and Marvin in the region if you need support with some of the technical tools that were presented now. So thank you very much, and I will now give back the floor to Ashita. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Melissa. That was really insightful, and it was good to note the Gap Fund initiatives also in Nepal, like you mentioned. And about Urban Act and Gap Fund partnership, yes, definitely it has been going since long, and we are happy that through this partnership we were able to support cities in the region to some extent. Thank you, Melissa. So moving to the next presentation of the day. So to support the cities for the early stage project preparation, ESCAP with the partners under the framework of Urban Act project has developed the early stage city climate project bankability diagnostic tool. And this tool will be live very soon. We do have the link, which we will share towards the end of this session. And today we have amongst us Ms. Margot de Groot, who is the Project Preparation and Climate Finance Specialist at ESCAP, and she will walk us through the tool and will share how this tool can be helpful for the cities for early stage project preparation. Thank you, Margot. Over to you.
Thank you, Ashita, and very glad to be here and to see also familiar faces. I would just give a short context of what was the rationale behind building this tool and what is the framing a little bit. We have conducted also some kind of assessment of tools that were available, and what we felt also working also not only with Public Development Bank but with cities is that of course there is challenge to move mostly from concept and pre-feasibility stage to, I would say, more mature project. There is often a focus on bankability, but I would rather frame it as a challenge to financeability. Why? And I've noticed that some of the questions were how to transform concept into bankable project. The thing is, bankability is partly a perception. And we explained that, but it's a perception of the financier that your project has sufficient evidence to be sustainable, financially viable, and sustainably operational in a sustainable manner, eventually for you to be able to repay. So that if we think about in terms of financiability, and that's why project preparation is important, it's not necessarily aimed for external financing. Thinking project financeability is also important, even if you finance your project on your own balance sheet, and even more for climate projects that require long-term planning and where I would say the value that you created may take longer time to materialize. The second thing is, yes, there is a lot of preparation available, and I think also CCFLA that is doing a regular mapping of project preparation facilities available to cities. And what there is increasing work to coordinate all those facilities and support. A lot of them are, except for the Gap Fund, that's really support concept pre-feasibility. The majority of them arrive at, I would say, feasibility stage, and often target project with minimum ticket size that doesn't match, I would say, project proposal from the majority of cities. And that is because those project preparation facilities are often funded by multilateral donors that have higher transaction cost. And the third point was, yes, we have plenty and a plethora of tools available for cities and framework, but we found that there were a gap on having a practical bridge between really early project conceptualization and I would say pre-feasibility kind of financiability assessment. Why? Because we felt that even when applying to project preparation facilities, there was a lack of understanding of what would be some kind of basic minimum ticket size or structuring or financing pathway. Yes. So just a quick recap of what I just said. Financeability is allow cities access capital that they want to need now, based on the value that they aim to create in the future. And of course, this has a cost, but also this requires kind of some financial and technical planning to ensure and to inspire financial confidence that the project will succeed and sustain throughout the project lifecycle. So how does this translate into, I would say, practical assessment criteria from financing perspective? What is a typical project finance checklist from a financing perspective? They want to know that the project would be technically viable, economically justified, especially from DFI and Public Development Bank, if it creates sufficient public and economic value, if it's going to be financially sustainable, so basically whatever savings or revenue or fiscal flow that are generated by the project will allow to finance, repay capital expenditure, but also sustain operation. If the sponsor or the implementing entity can actually deliver this project, and bankable. So bankable in this restricted manner. Now it encompasses all those dimensions. It is used as an umbrella, but strictly speaking, is for whether the city or the project is looking for external finance and would be able to repay. And of course, a very important component is our risk allocated in a sound manner and can be mitigated. So full bankability is, of course, not expected at pre-feasibility stage, but you need somehow to demonstrate a pathway to financiability. So the toolkit that we have designed is really an early stage kind of strategic guidance to give you a sense check across key project finance fundamentals. And I stress this, that we focus on project finance, meaning that it's not a tool to assess city's creditworthiness if you want to get a loan from a local commercial bank or public development bank. It's really for project finance structure and to have like off-balance sheet kind of financing. It aims to identify key gaps, but also especially provide kind of very concrete, easy to understand recommendation on how to improve different levers across project fundamentals, help you to develop more robust and credible project proposal, including for project preparation facilities by adding a kind of financing lens to your project, and also support internal planning and prioritization and budgeting process. So the tool has two components. One is a cost simulator, allowing city even with basic early stage assumption to extract some basic indicators that will give you some flag on the different ratio. That will focus on indicating financial viability challenges compared to sectoral benchmark. Just a point on this, sectoral and benchmark are very, I would say, not only sector, but project specific and will vary from region to region. We don't have a single database for what would be the repository for benchmark for each country, but the tool will indicate also some resources that you can use and has been designed, and I think that is the most important thing, because has been designed for local expert to be customized, indicating domestic or local benchmark per sector and potentially per project if they want. And I think that's really the addition that we wanted to have, because we realized that it was very difficult to have standardized approach, not only between country, but also between sectors. So the cost simulator provide a template with pre-filled, I would say, threshold and flag, but that has been designed for further customization. The second component is more, I would say, a kind of easy, fast checklist, but allowing cities to understand what are the key parameters that drive project level bankability. So it look at different components through automated question that will ask, I would say, just a simple categorical answer, and each of them will guide you to specific recommendation depending on what you have answered. So just an overview of what is inside those two tools. So the first one, again, look at basic cost and revenue assumption, but also inflow assumption, not looking yet at financing cost, because we consider that this is a tool really for cities at concept and feasibility stage, and precisely looking at what is your financing headroom based on project characteristic. Again, those methodological guidance can be customized by country expert, and it leads to a final dashboard where you can give specific indicators. What is the capex intensity, and what does it mean for financing? What is the benchmark for the sector in terms of OPEX capex ratio, and so on. And the second one is, I would say, just an easy one that is a little bit more qualitative, that will ask 30 questions across different parameters, including cash flow certainty, operational sustainability, whether there is potential for capital repayment or potential. Those are really qualitative input. Yes, no, maybe uncertain. But based on the cost estimate that you will build on the first one, you will be able to better answer to the readiness question. So that is not very visible, but just to give you an overview of the dashboard and the flag that it triggers, with cities input being really limited to key cost assumption. And that is also a short video of the readiness scan. Yeah, so it can be, again, customized by sector. Yeah, so each large sector will drive specific sector-specific question across all those parameters, allowing you to provide to select most suitable answer, and each answer will get to a recommendation. We'll maybe add also some kind of overall, not scoring, but project profile, but that's just a feature that we haven't deployed in the previous version. Okay, so what the tool is not. I've seen in the question on what is there is no turnkey solution for moving from concept to bankability. The gap or the problem and gap on bankable project is not a technical gap per se, it's mostly a preparation gap. Most city climate projects arrive DFI or private financing desk without a kind of stricter cost evidence or risk allocation framework or a new model, or even pre-feasibility study, or I would say idea of how this will be structured and financed and operated. So that is, again, a long journey that can take several months or years, but Toolkit, like the GAP Fund and us, maybe probably arriving a little bit earlier before getting support to the GAP Fund, provide this continuum of support to get progressively into those more technical assessment checklist. So it's not a substitute for full feasibility analysis, but give you an entry point to understand what you should ask also when you will draft your OR for consultants during feasibility study, and what are the potential weaknesses in your project financial structure. So the thing that we should be aware, and I think that's like related to what I mentioned in terms of bankability, those are project fundamentals that we consider rather cross-cutting and reflective of what would be a sound project from a financing perspective, but it's not an exhaustive list of all criteria that may be used by financier and donor that up to now are not yet fully harmonized. So of course, depending on the mandate or on their risk return profile, they will have different kind of expectation. Okay, so just very quickly, snapshots of the equivalent of the toolkit that the GAP Fund is building on a broader scale, that has been developed through Urban Act specifically, and I think that's the most added value is really working with specific country in the region. One is, first question is, of course, what is available and accessible to your city in terms of financing option? So the National Enabling Framework Condition Toolkit, which is a set of questions, help you to understand what is the environment you evolve. What are you able to borrow, and if yes, on which condition? What is a legal framework in which your city operates? And then this can be complemented also in what is available and understanding what are the innovative instruments that can be used to value also, I would say, co-benefits of your project, and how can this be translated into a financing and a business model. So CCFLA financial instrument toolkit allow you to also explore the space. But then second question, and that's where the diagnostic toolkit comes, is what is your city or your project, which are two different things but related, are able to mobilize in terms of financing. If you consider, or if you are looking for balance sheet finance, so using your on balance sheet to borrow or to raise not maybe equity finance for municipality, but use your own city creditworthiness to get financing, then you have a lot of existing creditworthiness assessment framework like PEFA and the like. But the tool really comes to bridge this gap in project finance viability assessment to understand, just considering your project characteristic, what is the potential scope of type of financing pathway that you can consider. That is not definitive. That could evolve throughout the project preparation cycle, but that gives you some kind of flags and which parameter you can act on. And finally, and I think that is also very important, is climate finance, although is not so different from conventional finance, can recognize also what different type of value creation that may not be recognized by other type of financing. But that needs somehow to be monetized or to be quantified, or to be economically quantified. So how, very concretely, what could be the benefit on the population and the ecosystem, and potentially what would be the impact on your own budget also if you implement this project, and will trigger this amount of cost saving on a 10 or 20-year time frame. This is kind of exercise that could be conducted also at early stage or pre-feasibility stage to help you consider how this can be monetized and valued in my financing model. So yes, and then of course, when you have this short list of solution, the question would be what kind of financing model would be adequate and acceptable for your city, and more broadly for your population that may pay in somehow as a user or as a taxpayer. Okay, so that's just a summary to understand that to get your short list of options, what would be the right financing model or financing pathway, you have really need to cross those consideration, country-specific consideration in which framework you operate, then project-specific consideration, what are the characteristics of the project in terms of revenue or not necessarily revenue generation, but at least saving opportunities that could be turned into a financing model, and what is the scope of financing instrument, that you can realistically mobilize. And I will stop here, but I would be happy to just answer or complement any point that I've mentioned during the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. Thank you for walking us through the tool. And just to mention that this tool is currently available at the regional level, but then as Margot mentioned, that it can be translated to country-specific conditions at a later stage. And the tool will be available on ESCAP repository, and the link would be shared with all the participants via email as well. And thank you to all the participants for today. We will move to Q&A. And also because in all these presentations, we were able to highlight different tools that came out to address different barriers at different stages of the project preparation life cycle, starting from the enabling environment and also to the other financial toolkits which CCFLA has developed, and they have shared in the chat box as well. So as we move to the question and answer session, before we take the questions from the Q&A session, from the Q&A box, I have some questions which I would like to address, especially to the Gap Fund colleagues. For example, when we are working with Tier 2 cities in Asia Pacific, I think one common challenge that we face is a small ticket size project. And then the aggregation is again a challenge considering different aspects and different challenges with the city. So do you have any insights on that how this challenge of small ticket size can be addressed? And do you have any suggestion for the cities that how they can proceed with the aggregation? I think if Gap Fund would be able to respond to this.
Sure, thank you very much. Yes, so we work. This is a key question. All our regional teams, I mean, we all ask the same questions. How do we make sure that the small ticket size projects get support, especially from multilateral development banks we work with? So we've done several. We tried several strategies. So first, we've organized a number of national workshops and events to get to receive proposals from a large number of cities in the countries, and then we try to group them per sector and explore if there was a governance or coordination mechanism we could exploit to have one single proposal submitted to the Gap Fund. Another strategy is to work with financial intermediaries or national development banks when there are some. So, for example, in Southeast Asia, and Margot can tell a bit more about this, but we do work with PTSMI, trying to identify sectoral pipelines of project that the Gap Fund could support further. We've also worked with GIZ colleagues, not necessarily in Southeast Asia, but in Morocco, for example, where at the provincial level, the province helped to identify several energy-related projects that were jointly submitted to the Gap Fund and that are now receiving Gap Fund support on the EIB side. So yes, we do try technically to find this settings and this governance arrangements that could support and that could be a good entry point to facilitate aggregated projects. But again, we only work at the pre-feasibility stage, and this is the stage where the collaboration is kind of easy to design, but after the pre-feasibility stage, and maybe Hamza can tell a bit more about this, but there might be more challenges when it comes to implementation and to implement projects that span across different municipalities. So I don't know if my colleagues also want to complement.
No, I think the question of aggregation is increasingly under the radar. So for me, and I trust that national development bank or the national level kind of intermediary of aggregation platform is definitely the way to go for many reasons, because they can have lower transaction costs, typically by being able to pay in local currency and hire local consultants. But also what we are really working to do, and I give the example of PTSMI, is how can we embed project preparation facilities within those national development banks, so that we cut a little bit part of the middlemen, I would say that the value chain, to be closer to institutions that can first are really aligned with national priorities, so they can set the condition also that will be aligned with government condition, which in the case of public development bank, government are the usually majority shareholder of development banks. But also can provide those preparation funding in a more flexible manner, and in a manner that will be already aligned with the downstream financier and at domestic level. In terms of aggregation, there is many way through which aggregation can be done, and I think CCFLA have done several reports also to map different kind of interesting structure, whether it is in de-risking or in looking for additional insurance product that will ensure collective set of project. What I think for now is aggregation is not only possible between different cities, but also at city level. And I think that's something that really could be considered, is how cities can also consider developing an investment package that would be relatively coherent, whether a project that would be phased or developed around different phases to a little bit increase the ticket size. Or if cities that are able to access to instruments, bond issuance, that's typically the kind of instrument that allow you to finance different projects. And I think beyond external financing, and I was talking to C40 CFF, which is another project preparation facility that intervene a little bit at later stage, so at pre-feasibility. And they were saying that they actually support a lot of cities that eventually want to finance the project themselves once they have been able to identify the benefit and structure a little bit the financing model. So my point is, yes, but external financing is not always the way to go for many reasons. But no matter what, thinking from an early stage, what will be the financial viability for your project and whether you will be able to operate this project throughout the life cycle will be critical. And project preparation is, I would say, is not a nice add-on. It's just a necessity. In the same way that feasibility study is also for a lot of financiers the credential for bankability. And it's very unlikely that you will get this credential without this kind of preliminary studies.
Yeah, thanks, Margot. And thanks, Melissa, for these insightful remarks and also for highlighting the role of national development banks here. Moving to the next question, which is from Q&A session. They want to know that how cities can typically engage with the funding organizations and how they can meet the timelines and formats and the proposal requirements, considering that there could be some challenges within the city as well. So is there a platform which can have information for all of these funding opportunities at a common place or something which can facilitate the cities? Hamza, I think you could better respond to this one.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks for that question. Yeah, I think in terms of public or DFI funding, there are multilateral development banks or other institutions that have their own criteria to which a city needs to sort of prepare their projects or have in those enabling conditions to sort of fulfill those criteria. But I think I cannot recall if there is a standardized platform that has all of this information compiled at one place, because most of these conversations are usually routed through the national governments. The best way forward would be to for cities to sort of engage with their national governments, the finance ministries, and so on, and then through those channels engage with the banks or any other donors. So I think these conversations happen through strong partnerships within a country. So I think the best way forward is to forge those partnerships and then access such support from MDBs or other DFIs. But what cities can do from their end is to be like really prepared, uh, have strong economic or financial rationales for their projects. And when I say economic or financial rationales, then I mean like clear evidence of public value in their projects, reasonable cost estimates, and expected benefits that are quantified, have an initial understanding of who is going to pay, who is going to benefit, and if possible, how any revenue or savings will be generated. And then if there's an identification of potential revenue streams, then that will be really helpful to make a case. And so basically, the donors or the funders need to have confidence that a city can actually execute a project, and the whole process can remain financially sustainable over time, and the city has the required governance structures or enabling conditions or political support for the project to be actually implemented. I'll stop there, but very happy for other colleagues to chime in as well.
Thanks, Hamza. I think you've addressed the major point for the question. And building on the same, actually, there are two questions, in fact, where the participants want to know that how can cities identify the appropriate financing source which is based on their needs, and also how they can meet the expectations of the funding agency. I think we can start with the gap fund, and probably everyone can chime in for this question.
Sure. Thank you very much for the question. So I think it's a question, I think Margot mentioned that it's a question that cities need to ask themselves at the very start of their planning and ideation process. Understand what type of resources will be mobilized for their project, if the project will generate revenue. If they have already identified some like local resources, national resources, if they have already worked with technical and financial partners that they could also resort to or contact again for additional support. So this is what we really try to do. We work on both sides, both on refining the project idea and making sure it aligns with the gap fund criteria. And from the very beginning, we ask this critical question: who is going to pay and support my projects at the early stage, but also in the long term? So we're really doing this work, step-by-step work with cities. And one of the tools I briefly presented, because we only had 7 minutes, but it focuses only on this, and it's a decision-making tree that we will that will be available online in the coming months. But what is also very important at our level is that as part of the Gap Fund partnership, we try to work with the full ecosystem of partners at the national level to understand who is doing what before even submitting the project idea, to try to understand what are the interests from the different partners, obviously starting with World Bank and EIB, but not only. We work with all other bilateral agencies, AFD, KfW, many others, and we really try to identify projects that have good chances, because they are aligned also with the ongoing work, to move ahead. So I don't have a clear and a question that would apply to all the Urban Act countries, because it's really nationally specific, sometimes regionally specific, and it necessitates we need to be in touch with the different funding opportunities to make these connections happen, and one of the key criteria of the GAP fund is to ensure, as I said, this handover, from project from early stage to subsequent phases, and we work a lot on this. And Hamza already presented the CCFLA resources, but if you want to have a panorama of what exists out there, the different PPFs criteria, I mean, this is a good start to understand the type of financial or technical support the cities can receive.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. Also, in the interest of time, I think I will just ask one final question to all the experts here, which is actually the summary of all the questions which are left in the Q&A section. So it's more like that cities want to know that what are the common mistakes that they make in the project preparation, and how they can address these mistakes, and so that they can attract both public and private investments, and further how they can make their projects more inclusive and socially beneficial. So starting with Hamza, and then Melissa, and then Margot.
Thanks for the question. I think a common mistake that cities may make is that any funding or financial considerations or any implementation considerations are often introduced too late in the preparation process. So cities may have good ideas that might be attractive politically, but then they might not be financially sustainable or aligned with likely funding sources over time. This, I think, this is the main challenge, and this is also something that the tool, the Urban Act tool, also aims to address to a great extent. And then there are other challenges like insufficient attention to life cycle costs of project, operational sustainability considerations, attention to implementation capacity, and long-term maintenance requirements. So all of this needs to build into the early stage thinking in the project preparation process. So I'll just stop there. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Hamza. Melissa, over to you.
Thank you. I think Hamza answered very clearly. But yeah, maybe just to insist on the capacity, we had some cases where the project idea was great. We received a good project idea, and it seemed that the technical and financial aspects were well designed. And then we tried to reach out to the city again after the submission, and we couldn't get hold of the city, or maybe the technical staff has moved. And so sometimes it's also a matter of finding the right persons to work with in the long term within the city, but not only, as I said, with the broader ecosystem. So working at the provincial and with national development banks, now we try to also ensure long-term support. But yeah, I don't have regarding the social and inclusivity aspects of the projects. That's the second question you asked. I mean, at the GAP Fund, we're not specifically working on these two aspects at the very ideation phase, but I know these are requirements asked by the banks, and I know the work of the consultant during the pre-feasibility stage addresses this question, and the consultants work very closely with cities to identify how to strengthen these like this social and inclusivity components. And our C40 colleagues also have a lot of tools on these specific topics that we could share after the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Margot, final comments from your end?
No, I think I totally agree in the sense that the first thing for me, for City to ask when I think about a project is who will pay for the value you are creating for this project. It can be taxpayer, it can be user, it can be public budget, but you need to think who will eventually pay for this. And considering what are the acceptable option and realistic one, then you will consider whether you will even spend the time to apply for a PPF. Because it's also like a time demanding, or considering whether it will be suitable for external financing or commercial financing, or you need constitutional one. Having just this question in mind will help you to translate this concept into a project where there is actually a demand. And then whether this demand can be financially or monetized or not, that is where comes a question of how much public budget or concessional finance should come in. But I think this should help. And I think another practical guide is, I know that resources are often stretched, but having someone that will take some of the time to also proactively engage with international city networks, but also with financing, and starting to adopt, and I don't necessarily like this term, but I would say proactive kind of marketing of your city and your project pipeline can also be a change maker. And I've seen the impact it could have on some cities that were already there participating, and that actually being known by financier and partners.
Thank you, Margot. Thanks to all the presenters for this highly insightful presentations today and all this discussion. And I feel that, yes, cities do face a lot of barriers, but through the cooperation, through partnerships, and through the tools which are available, we would be able to support some of the cities in the region and help the projects move forward. Thanks again to all the presenters, and also thanks to all the participants for staying with us. To mention that the presentation and materials associated with this webinar, and also all the resources which have been shared by the experts, they would be made available to you via email after this webinar. And for receiving the certificates for the webinar, please fill out the feedback survey. QR code is there on your screen right now. And once you will be able to fill the feedback survey, the certificates will be shared with you within few weeks of the webinar. So thank you again, and please do join us for our next webinar on 25th June. Thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.